Hey coders, welcome back to our SwiftUI series. Today we're tackling state management in SwiftUI. We'll cover state, binding, and observed object by building a simple app that tracks a score across two screens. This will help us see how data is managed and shared in SwiftUI. Let's dive on in. Cool, let's go ahead and set up our project. So I have Xcode open on my end. I'm just going to hit the create new project button. We'll grab our template here. We'll select iOS app. We'll hit next. I already kind of have my name. If you want to call it SwiftUI counter, that would be great. Or a simple counting app. Totally up to you what you name your project. Set your team and organization identifier, and make sure that your interface is set to SwiftUI here. And your language is on Swift. You won't need any of these testing systems or storage. Once that's all good, you can press next and choose where you want to save it. I just have a folder on my desktop called Swift/Xcode examples, so I'm just going to put it on in there. We don't need to have the Git repository on my Mac selected. Once that looks great, you can hit the create button and we'll be greeted with our template. All right, in our content view here, so on the left side of our screen in our navigation here under SwiftUI counter, we do have our content view Swift file. It should have opened up automatically. This is where we'll be able to declare a state variable in order to store the score. So a state manages the score within our content view, and that score variable is going to be private. And it's specific to this view. We're going to create a button that's going to increase the score, and we'll see that within the view, it's going to update that score automatically. So if you want to, under your structure, you can make some space. So I'm going to go on line 10 here for me. I'm going to hit return a couple times to make some space. And we can make that state or private variable by typing at state with a capital S at state. Okay, then we're going to type out private in all lowercase, var for a variable, and then we're going to call it score, and we're going to set it to just to be 0 for now. 0 will kind of be our default. Cool. We do have some things built within our VStack from our template already. Let's just go ahead and select that and delete them, just so we have an empty phone screen to be working with. But we can go ahead and add some text that's going to display our score. So let's go ahead and type text with a capital T. Then we're going to go ahead and add some brackets, and we'll say within a string here, so we'll add our quotation marks, score, and then let's interpolate our score. So we're going to do / brackets, score variable, so all lowercase. You can see that we have that integer value there. And that's going to display whatever our score is in this kind of text on the screen. Let's go ahead and make our text a little bit bigger. So right under the text, we're going to add a period, and we'll say font. And then in the brackets, we'll say dot headline to make it a little bit bigger. Let's actually, instead of headline, let's go with large title maybe. There we go. That's a little bit easier to see. That's kind of the size I was going for initially. Okay, amazing. Now let's go ahead and under that, we'll add a button, and we can have this button increase score. So to declare a button, we're going to simply type out button with a capital B. Then we're going to add a bracket, and we're going to say action. Okay, we're going to add a colon and a space. And then we're going to add a brace, and then we're going to hit return, and this is where we're going to declare our action. So when the button is pressed, we want our score to be plus equals 1, so that's going to add 1 to the score. Great. Now on the lines outside of the brace, we're going to add a different brace, and here is where we're going to add the properties of the button. So we'll say text, and we'll say that this increases score. You can just put increase score if you want. Totally up to you. It's your app. We can add some padding. So we'll add dot padding. And then maybe we can also add the foreground color and the background color, just so you know the button's a little bit easier for the user to see. So we'll say background We can say color with a capital C dot, let's do blue. I think blue is a nice color. We'll also need to obviously change our foreground color now because the text has gone away. So we'll say foreground style. And then we'll do color once again. I'm going to do dot white. You can choose whatever colors you want here. Just make sure that it is legible. And because it is a button, we'll make it kind of have more rounded edges. We can do so by changing the corner radius. So let's go ahead and do dot corner radius. And then let's add a number. Let's see what 10 looks like. That's pretty good. Maybe I'll do a little bit higher just for my liking. Maybe 20. Yeah, that looks great. Cool. Now we can actually go ahead and see how our score works on the screen. So if I press on this button here, it should increase our score, which it does. One thing to note is every time that this view is kind of refreshed in the preview, it will reset back down to 0. So if we were to change this from increases score to increase score, you'll notice that it does reset back down to 0. If we run the simulator, every time we reopen the app, it would reset to 0. But right now, anytime that the kind of view is refreshed, it will set that score back to be 0. One other thing we're going to add, because we are going to be dealing with multiple views, is we're going to go ahead and add a navigation link. So you can do so by typing out navigation link, so capital N and capital L there. Then we're going to declare a destination. So we're going to say destination, and then we'll say score detail view. This is something we're going to be creating in just a little bit. And we're going to be passing along the score value. So we're going to type score just as we did with our variable. And then we're going to add a colon, space, $, score, as we're going to be sending this bound variable over. Cool. On the next line here, we're going to add, or sorry, right outside the brackets, we're going to add a opening brace. We're going to add some text. We're going to say, go to score detail. We're just going to be using this as an example to show how it can be shared between the two screens. And then we're going to add some padding. We can even copy what we've done here just to save a little bit of time. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to copy what we've done for our button. I'm going to paste it down here. And I'm just going to change the background color from blue to be green, perhaps. Now, it currently won't work as we don't have our score detail view in scope. So let's go ahead and create a new Swift file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my bottom left on Xcode, and I'm going to select new file from template. I know in older versions it's called something slightly different, but what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be selecting a new SwiftUI view. So it should be under interface here. You can also use the filters, SwiftUI, and you can hit next. And let's go ahead and name it the exact same thing that we had in our navigation link. So I believe that was called score detail view. Use the same capitalization and everything. Go ahead and hit create. And you'll notice that we now have our score detail view appearing on the screen here. We do have some text, hello world. We do need to make a few changes first. So first things first is we're definitely going to want to have a binding variable, and that binding variable is going to be, grabbing that information from our previous screen. So let's go ahead and under our structure here, make a little bit of space, and we'll say at binding with a B, var for variable, score, and we're just going to say colon int, because we know it's going to be an integer value that we are passing along. Now you will notice in our preview, it will say missing argument. If we click on the arrow, it should expand here. Missing argument for parameter score and call. And basically it wants us to insert the score and then the binding with the integer. So let's go ahead and do something similar to what it's suggesting. And actually what we're going to be doing is just creating like a score value with a constant. So just kind of give it like some numbers to work off of. In the actual app, it would be grabbing that information, but because we are using the preview, we need to kind of pass it along something. You can kind of think of it as this preview is this test environment. So we're just going to give it like a testing number, if that makes sense. So we're going to type score : space, and we're going to do dot constant, and then we're going to add a value. In this case, we'll do an integer value of 10. So for all intents and purposes, we're going to be passing the number 10 along. We're just adding it within this preview, so it kind of has something to work with. When you run it in the simulator, you'll have no worries. If this part is giving you any issues, you can just forgo using the preview. Passing binding integers and numbers and things like that in the preview actually took me a really long time to learn. But it's just kind of about providing it with some information, like a hypothetical, if you will, that I can use the numbers for. So let's go ahead and make some changes to our view here. Because we are kind of planning on seeing how data is shared, let's go ahead and we can add some text to see the score, as well as a button where we can also increase the score, and we can go back and forth and kind of see how those work. So let's go ahead and delete our text here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a VStack. I'm going to add my brace and add some space here. And let's go ahead and add some text. So we'll say text, score, detail, view, so we know where we are. We can make that dot font. Maybe we'll set this to be a title. So, oops. Dot title. Cool. Let's add some more text. So we'll say text, current score. And we'll interpolate our score value here. So we'll type out score. Next, we're going to go ahead and add a button. Actually, we should probably add some font to this. Dot font. And we'll say not large title. Afterwards, let's go ahead and create a button. Even if you want to go to your content view and copy your button, you totally can. I'm going to do that just to save a little bit of time. I'm going to go to my score detail view. Let's go ahead and paste that. Oh, I forgot to put a capital S on my VStack. I was like, why is it giving me an error? Capital V, capital S. Okay, so you can kind of see in our preview here now, we do have the current score displayed as 10. However, because in our preview, we've set this to be a constant of 10, our increased score actually isn't working. So there is, some limitations with the preview and things like that, especially when we're dealing with bindings. But what we can actually do is navigate in the simulator to kind of see how this score is going to be changing. So let's go back to our content view, and we just need to make one simple change. So we've added our navigation link. The only problem is we need to actually make this a navigation view, so we're able to go back and forth between the views. If you've seen my UI kit video, we'll basically just be, adding that navigation to our app. What we're going to do is go right above our VStack here, and we're going to type navigation, and we're going to say stack. We're going to add a brace, and then we're going to go down to where it says padding, and we're going to close off our other brace here. So if we double click on this, we can see that all of this code is within that navigation stack. We can even press on our kind of simulator here, and we can see that we are able to go to the score detail view. We can press the back button, and you'll see our score has updated from 5. If we make this 7 now, it will update to be 7. So if we go back, again, you can see how it increases and decreases properly, which is pretty cool. Again, the only kind of downfall of the preview here is if we go to this page, because when we're previewing it, we kind of have to give it like that hypothetical. We can't really play around with it, but due to the power of the preview, in this section, we can make it 3, it'll display as 3, make it 7 here, right? And you can kind of play around and go back and forth, and you can see how that data does transfer over. Let's just open it really quickly in our simulator so we can see the exact same thing. So I'll make this 2, now it says 2, amazing, 6, right? So no matter what we set the score to be, we go super fast, we can see that it displays on both of the screens, which is pretty cool. Okay, awesome. Now that you've got to play around with how we can have this kind of variable, we can share it with binding. Let's talk a little bit about observable objects. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace our state variable in the content view with an observable object. But before we do that, we will need to make a new class. So let's go to the very top of our code under where we've imported our SwiftUI here, and we're going to go ahead and create a class, and we'll say score model. We'll say this is an observable object, capital O. Object, we'll add a brace, hit return, and we'll say at published with a capital P, published bar variable score equals 0. We're then going to update our kind of content view here, and we're going to say at observed object, and then we're going to say variable score model equals score model. We're going to reference our class here. Now we're going to get a whole bunch of errors, also because I forgot the capital O. That's the first mistake there. And we're going to see that any time that our score is being represented, we are going to need to update that. But it's actually going to be a really quick fix because we just need to reference our score model here with the capital M dot score, because we're going to be accessing the score property. So you can either copy and paste, or you can just retype it out every time. So score model dot. See, that's why copy and paste is good, because it's not module. We'll save you some time here. And let's also update this navigation link to be the exact same thing, but we do have to do it slightly differently when we're passing it in the navigation link. And this time we're going to say score model, keep our colon here, and instead of the $ score, we're just going to reference the score model. Cool, and we do just need to update our score detail view as well, because we were using that at binding. We also need to change this to be observed object. Cool, variable. If you want to go ahead and copy and paste from the other one as well, score model colon score model, and then we'll of course need to update this as well. Score model. Oh, Xcode first. There we go. Dot score, and the exact same thing here. Now, before we run our app, you will probably have an error in your preview that will be preventing it from properly running. So before here, when we had our constant, we actually just need to create a sample instance of the score model for the preview in this case. Again, about a lot of the issues you might get with binding and different variables in your preview is you just need to kind of give it like an example, hypothetical, right? So let's go ahead and say let sample score model equals, since our score model with our brackets here. My Xcode seems to be a little bit laggy, which happens. And within these brackets here, I'm just going to change this to be score data detail view score model. We're gonna add a colon sample score model. And that should work no problem. So we're just going to basically, create that hypothetical example of a class, and we'll use that for our preview. But let's go ahead and run our app, and we'll see how that looks now with that, kind of data being stored and, passed along through the class, through our observed object, which is pretty cool. All right, so let's say increase score, go to score detail. Works the exact same as when we had the binding setup. So by using @ObservedObject, both content view and score detail view observe the same instance of score model. Changes to the score in one view automatically update the other, making @ObservedObject ideal for shared states across multiple views. So when should you be using state, binding, and @ObservedObject? So @state, this is used for local state in a single view. It's private for the view and doesn't affect any other views. @binding uses the passing data down to children views. So @binding allows child views to read and modify @state from its parent. And @ObservedObject and ObservableObject use shared data that needs to be accessed and updated across multiple views. This approach is perfect for creating central data models that multiple views can observe. So knowing when to use state, binding, and observable helps you manage your data flow and ensure your UI updates as expected. So we can see, this basically for our purposes, when we use the observable object, kind of allowed us to get the same result as when we're using the binding. But again, if you're planning on using this data across multiple views, maybe this is something that's consistent throughout your entire app. Instead of having a parent and a child, you might want to use that observable object. It's up to you how you want to use and pass along and access that data. So I hope you learned a lot today about creating new SwiftUI views and sharing that data. It's something that took me a really long time to kind of learn when to use each of these specific views. I hope you learned a little bit more about state, binding, and observed objects, how they work, and when to kind of use each and every one of them. It took me a really long time to kind of figure out binding and sharing variables in SwiftUI, but play around with it. There's a link to the documentation below if you do want to learn a little bit more about each and every one of these. But I hope that, kind of going through this sample app and, playing around with increasing the score and seeing it reflect and your changes reflect on all of those views was a good way to kind of learn how to use those. So yeah, that's it for our introductions to state management in SwiftUI. Today we explored how state binding and observed and observable work to help us track data across views. We even built this sample score tracker to see those concepts in action, right? Increasing the score to 25, go to this one, make it 30, and we can see that it reflects there. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our updates or any other SwiftUI videos and this kind of journey that we're going on here. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to see, please put them in the comments below and I'll do my best to cover those in a future video. But until next time, dream big and code bigger. Take care, everyone.